Someone asked a question about asserting dominance. How do you do that in like a sales situation, for example, or like any social situation? The best way or the best phrasing that I've heard about this is frame control. So don't look at it as asserting dominance, because before you know it, you're pissing in corners and trying to eat raw liver to assert your dominance over other human beings. But let's talk about frame control. I'm going to do a more in-depth video about this at some point in the future. But for now, this is going to be very helpful for any of you that want to be better at convincing people about anything. So whenever two people talk, there is a degree of frame control going on. And oftentimes frames clash. So I come in with my frame, you come in with your frame, and an epic battle ensues, and one of us is going to win. And if you want to get good at selling, and you want to get good at convincing people, you have to make sure that your frame wins. Now, this is not a one-size-fits-all, and we have plenty of frames to choose from. That's why I said I'm going to do a more in-depth video. But for now, let's talk about one of the most useful ones that I want you to use in sales calls, and that's going to be the expert frame. Now, imagine you go to a doctor. There's something wrong with you, and you go to the doctor. What's the first thing that happens? You come in, you have to go to the lady at the desk and say that you're there, because the doctor isn't sitting there, right? He's the expert. He's not going to be sitting at the desk. That's an underling that's sitting there, because he's so important that someone else takes care of his schedule, which is expert framing for you right there. And what happens next is that you get that annoying clipboard where you have to fill out the same questions you filled out 50 times before, like are you on heroin, like do you have AIDS, all of that stuff. You fill out no to all of that, hopefully, and you hand in your little clipboard to the lady, and she nods, and you just wait for the expert. And then finally the call comes, and you could come in, and he shakes your hand, sit down, and he basically says, okay, start talking. And he starts asking questions, because that is what an expert does. He asks questions to diagnose the issue. This is the same thing you should be doing in sales calls. Like, you shouldn't be coming in pitching your shit. Like, a doctor you don't sit down and then the doctor says, hey, bro, have I got some pills for you, man? They will take you places. He doesn't start out that way. At least I hope he doesn't. Otherwise, I would change your doctor. Sounds like a fun guy, though. Anyway, he says, basically, tell me about what ails you, and then he asks more questions, and still more questions. He zooms into the issue. And when he has enough information, he prescribes a solution. And what happens is that you take the solution because he's the expert. He actually knows what he's doing. Now, we can talk about doctors and, their knowledge in general, especially family doctors, needing a skill set so broad that it's almost impossible to always get the right solution. But that doesn't really matter. What matters in sales is that you're supposed to be the expert. You're supposed to be the one that asks the questions, and then you zoom in to ask more questions, and then when you have enough information, you get to prescribe the solution. So, okay, based on what you told me, the most logical thing to do right now, or the next step, or what we have to do right now, is XYZ. And XYZ is obviously going to be your product or service. And again, obviously, it needs to fit, right? Like, if you can't be selling shoes to people with no legs, that's not good. But assuming it fits, and assuming based on the questions you've asked him that the product is a good fit, you basically say, well, what we need to do right now is we're going to start doing a discovery project. I'm going to do XYZ for you. It's going to take, 4 weeks, 1 week, a day, I don't care. And we're going to get started doing that. And that's going to be $500, $50, $5,000, $1 million, I don't know. Whatever you're selling doesn't really matter. What matters is the way you set this up and the way you approach this from an expert frame point of view. And one last thing, because every once in a while, people challenge the expert frame. They want to know if you're for real. Imagine you going to the doctor, and there's something wrong with your BP, and then he says, well, it's probably going to be XYZ. And you say, well, on the internet, I read ABC. If he's good at his work, at his job, at his role, if he's confident, which he should be, he's a doctor, and you're not, he's going to say, I see you've done your research. Good job. And, I mean, you're not wrong. You're just missing some details. Let me fill you in. And then he's going to explain why he's right and you're wrong. But he's not going to say, no, that's bullshit. You shouldn't look up things on the internet. And I know way better because I'm a doctor and I studied for 8 years or 10 years or whatever. Because you don't have to explain yourself to a layman. You're the expert. You're just going to pat him on the head, basically. You're going to say, that's very good of you. You looked it up, or you did some background research. I love working with people that do some background research. And then you go on as the expert, because that's who you are. So, expert frame. Frame control, very important for selling.